Greetings, people. Apologies for being late, but Yvonne has her, she's got a mom's group she goes to, so I won't see her until much later, so I've got hours to myself. I'm just looking at some playoff oddities. So, all of these games going to overtime, and these series all seemingly ready to be done early. Columbus is putting up a fight right now. It's 7:16 to go in the second period. It's 3-1 Columbus. But I was thinking back to the 95 playoffs. Now you look at the 95 playoffs, here's how it went. The number 1 seed Quebec Nordiques got upset by the Rangers in 6. The number 2 seed Flyers beat the number 7 seed Buffalo in 5. Pittsburgh, the number 3 seed, beat Washington, the number 6 seed, in 7. New Jersey, the number 5 seed, beat Boston, the number 4 seed, in 5. Detroit, number 1, beat Dallas, number 8, in 5. San Jose, number 7, beat Calgary, number 2, in 7. Vancouver, number 6, beat St. Louis, number 3, in 7. And then Chicago, number 4, beat Toronto, number 5, in 7. So those are all relatively long series. That's not the part that I remember. Here's the part that I remember. In the second round, the second-seeded Flyers beat the 8th-seeded Rangers in 4. The 5th-seeded New Jersey Devils beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, the number 3 seeds, in 5. The number 1-seeded Detroit Red Wings beat the San Jose Sharks in 4. The Chicago Blackhawks, the number 4 seed, they beat the number 6 seed Vancouver Canucks in 4. In the conference finals, the New Jersey Devils, the number 5 seed, beat the number 2 seed Flyers in 6. The Detroit Red Wings, the number 1 seed, beat Chicago in 5. And then in the final, New Jersey swept Detroit. And it just felt like, all right, get her done. There was an ability for one team to get rolling and an inability for the other team to adapt and to come back. And the other playoffs it reminds me of that I've been thinking about, because there are a couple of different playoffs that it reminds me of, is the 1993 Stanley Cup playoffs, where the number 1 seed Bruins got swept in the first round by Buffalo. The number 1 seed Pittsburgh, they won the first round against Jersey and then lost the second round against the Islanders. The number 1 seed Blackhawks got swept by St. Louis. And the number 1 seed Vancouver, they beat Winnipeg and then they lost to the number 3 seed Los Angeles in the second round. So all your division winners were out by the second round. And the third place team Montreal, third place team Islanders, third place team Toronto, third place team LA. That's where it went. Of course, Toronto fans remember how that turned out from there. But that's what this series is, or this playoff's been reminding me of too, because everybody's talking about Washington. Everybody's talking about Washington's problems and, oh God, Washington is losing the Leafs. Chicago is ready to go out in the first round 2 years in a row. Chicago has the exact same problem as Washington right now. They're dominant in the regular season. The team doesn't seem to have a major deficiency. Speed, okay. In Washington's case, it could be speed. What's Chicago's deficiency? Same thing? Or is Nashville just a bad matchup? So you've got Anaheim as the number 1 seed that's going to get through. Montreal, like division winner. Montreal's a division winner that should get through the Rangers. The score right now of that game, I believe, is 2-1 Rangers, which would even the series if that score holds up. And you've got Washington down. You've got Chicago down. Now, would anybody be surprised if Montreal lost in the second round to Ottawa? Not really. Would anybody be surprised if Anaheim lost in the second round to Edmonton? Not really. So that's the other year this has kind of reminded me of, which is why I went out today and I got all these. These are all index cards. I'm going to start writing down items of information, little tidbits of information I find on each team on said index cards, and I'm going to start keeping track of stats so that during videos in the future, and especially during the summer, I'm able to just use the index cards and leave the magazines alone. And the magazines can be used for viewing, and in terms of the actual factual stuff, I have it all at my fingertips. So that's where I'm going with that. But it's an interesting landscape right now in the NHL because, again, St. Louis is up 3-0. Nashville's up 3-0, and they're both the lower seeds. Anaheim and Pittsburgh being up 3-0 is not really a surprise. We all knew that Columbus was going to struggle against Pittsburgh. We all knew that Calgary was going to struggle against Anaheim. I think those were the two series that I saw virtual locks in terms of who people were picking. Washington, it was close. There were certain people who were picking Toronto. But it goes further than just, Washington's choking. And again, I could take this back to the Detroit Red Wings before they won. Because everybody says, well, it's what Washington does. But again, I'm reminded of this because, I have this magazine. There's Yzerman, his first Stanley Cup, which was in 96-97. The years that preceded that, they won their division in 96, 95, 94. They won their division in 92. They were second in the division in 93, and they didn't win a cup that year, any of those years. When you talk about the Ovechkin era, it started in, they became a President's Trophy winner in 2010, so we're going to say about 8 years. It was longer than that for Yzerman before they won a Stanley Cup. And let's see, where was Yzerman's points at this juncture? I'll find her. Because this is a snapshot of that season. Yeah, Yzerman had played 1,023 games, had 539 regular season goals, and 1,340 points before he got his first Stanley Cup. And he had 111 points in 113 playoff games in his career that year that he won the Stanley Cup. The year they won the Stanley Cup, he had 13 points in 20 games. 7 goals. He'd experienced playoff disappointment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times before that 12th time he got the Stanley Cup. And up until that first Stanley Cup, there were a lot of people who said the Detroit Dead Things will never win a Stanley Cup. And that's the way they said it. And whenever anybody would say, well, I'm taking Detroit to win, you'd get, Detroit. Much like Quebec. Quebec didn't get that respect either after the Lindros trade. And then when they went to Colorado and they won, everybody was like, oh, Colorado. No, I remember Quebec, the Quebec Nordiques, they won 2 games. They won their first 2 games against Montreal. And there was a newspaper comic that ran that showed Pierre Pagé, who was coach of the Quebec Nordiques at the time, driving a tank at the Montreal Canadiens with the idea of they're just running the Canadiens over. Quebec lost the next 4 games in a row. So this is why I don't get excited early in a series. This is why I don't get too down early in a series. So this is why I'll say, yeah, Boston's likely going to be out. It's likely that Ottawa's going to run them down and knock them out. But I've seen this before. This is part of that whole, my God, Shannon's old thing that happens. I can remember playoffs back to 82. I can remember not that long ago when the Sharks had the Kings down 3-0, and I'm like, oh man, this is great. The Kings are going to get swept. And then the Sharks lost 4 in a row. Stunned everybody. Because, up until then, I remember Jonathan Quick misplaying pucks behind the net, and it was Keystone Cops out there for the Kings. They couldn't do squat. And all of a sudden, here come the Kings. So I don't count a team like Chicago out. Until that final horn sounds in Game 4, and they're done, I don't count them out. And if they win tomorrow, they absolutely can come back. Because they have to win 3 in a row, yes, but they have 2 of them at home. Absolutely they could come back. Will they? They have like a 4% chance in my eyes. Same with Minnesota and same with Columbus, who have allowed a second goal here. So it's 3-2 Columbus. And I said, even when it was 2-0 Columbus, I said to Yvonne before she left, I said, I still think Pittsburgh finishes it tonight. A team like Pittsburgh doesn't usually waste a chance to finish a team off. That's been Washington's main weakness. When they've had a chance to finish a team off and get some rest, they've let their foot off the gas. They've let them get back in the series, and it's taken them longer to put a team out than it should, so they don't get the rest they need for the next series. The other team gets more rest, or the other team's just in better shape, and the Caps get knocked out. That's a funny thing, too. Oh, this is the wrong year. Because the other thing I was wondering was if the Caps have also been a victim of something that used to happen to the Canucks, where the Canucks would get knocked out of the playoffs, and then somebody would say to me in June, well, at least the Canucks got knocked out by the team that won the Stanley Cup. Isn't that good? No. That made me feel better. Why would that make me feel better? I don't want that team to win the Stanley Cup. I want the Canucks to win the Stanley Cup. And they're never going to win a Stanley Cup. In all likelihood. But they could. It's not likely, but they could. Just like Vegas could win the Cup next year. Probably even odds. But, yeah. That's what these playoffs have been making me think of. Is 93, 95... And in terms of the overtimes, I don't know. Last night they had 4 overtime games, which apparently was the first time that's happened since 1985. These playoffs have been unique. And this is the other thing that's driving me nuts. Guys, these games are all going into overtime. There are no blowouts happening. I know certain series have gone a certain way, or there's certain teams that are up 3-0. It does not tell the whole story. There's so little to choose between these teams now. So little from 1 through 16. And an overtime game is tossing the dice. 50-50. Unless you're the Capitals. And history shows that the Capitals don't do well in overtime. In the NHL. They don't. They just don't. Historically, they do very poorly. I believe their Game 7 record in overtimes is 4-10. So if Toronto can get to a Game 7, if this series goes back and forth and it's a Game 7, then yeah, I'm calling it. Toronto wins it in 7. Because Washington's record, especially at home in Game 7s, is bad. I think they're 1-6 at home. I think, and somebody will go check that out, but I think it's not a good home record in Game 7s for Washington. It's bad. So, but again, it had been, almost 50 years for Chicago. It had been 50 years for Detroit. It had been 50 years for the Rangers. Eventually, on a long enough timeline, an organization probably wins at least this many. St. Louis this year could emerge and do it. St. Louis right now is sort of reminding me of what the Kings did in 2012, when Jonathan Quick got hot at exactly the right time, and they rode him to the Stanley Cup. And that's, to me, what the Blues look like they're doing. They've got this hot streak right now. They've got this hot goalie, and everything is going right for them. And everything's going against Minnesota. And if they can, against Nashville, they have home ice. So if they meet Nashville, they have home ice advantage. They can ride this at the very least into the conference final. And between Anaheim, Calgary, San Jose, and Edmonton, which one of those teams is a juggernaut right now? Anaheim, probably. Could Anaheim running into a hot goalie stop them? Absolutely. Part of the reason that Calgary's down is Calgary's been taking penalties when they don't need to. And the goaltending has been better at the Anaheim end than the Calgary end. And St. Louis hasn't been as undisciplined as Calgary. I don't think anybody's been as undisciplined as Calgary in the playoffs right now. And, they could definitely give Anaheim fits. And then if Washington gets knocked out, the East should belong to Pittsburgh. It is really hard to repeat as Cup champions. St. Louis got to the conference final last year and lost to the Sharks. St. Louis is one of those teams that if they decide we're not failing this year, can push it that next round, can get into the finals, and then who knows? St. Louis could pull a Kings. There's no reason to say that in the second round, if Toronto plays Pittsburgh, Toronto could knock out Pittsburgh. Stop laughing. Just stop. Because there's so little to choose between these teams now. You look at the lineups up and down, and every team has their superstars. Almost every team in the playoffs can roll 4 lines. Almost every team in the playoffs has a really solid top 6, and they all have a starting goaltender that they rely on and they believe in. I think, for Anaheim, last night's game maybe shook Gibson a little bit, but not very much. Gibson will be fine, and from here on, I figure for Game 4, Gibson will come back in and he could pitch a shutout. He's young. You just don't know from one game to the next. Anyways, that sounds like thunder. That's fun. But anyways, yeah, that's just some of the stuff that's been occurring to my brain over the last week, basically since the playoffs started. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what these series remind you of, what these playoffs are reminding you of, if they remind you of anything. And let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And enjoy the hockey, because this is the best hockey usually of the season. The first round of the playoffs is usually the best, most hotly contested hockey of the playoffs, because these teams really hate each other. And it's fun. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all again soon.